Do you have any thoughts on shared experiences of where you have seen the psychological and the spiritual come together in someone's healing journey?
Sure, I'll go first. So I believe that specifically with addiction, it is a spiritual problem with physical symptoms. In my work, I'm very blessed to work at an organization where spirituality is a required component of healing. We actually have spiritual leaders as part of our program, and the clients get to work with them to really explore that side. In my personal journey, I have a very close personal walk with Jesus. I am of the Christian faith, and I don't believe that I could do anything healing-wise without his help. I frequently see him working hand in hand with me with my patients at the facility I work at. As part of my personal journey, I remember my last blackout drunk. I woke up in the middle of my floor, my living room floor, to an audible Romans 5:8. At some point during my blackout, I must have been reading my Bible because it was on the floor near me. So I immediately grabbed it and read it. And Romans 5:8 says, "For God so demonstrated his love for us that while we were sinners, Christ died for us." And that was kind of the real beginning of my journey. That was where I let go. That was where I began to surrender. And from that point on, he continues to open doors for me, and I continue to walk through them. I believe, like I said at the beginning, it's a spiritual problem with physical symptoms. So I integrate spirituality in all of my work.
Do you have any stories of where that was important for someone's psychological healing that you helped them walk that out?
Absolutely. So I have a client I worked with that at the start of his treatment was self-described violent atheist. And the meaning he gave behind that was, if you try to talk to me about God or anything spiritual, I will verbally attack you. We didn't. We talked purely about the neurology and about how addiction affects your brain and your ability to experience life. And through his journey, I asked him to start looking for what I call breadcrumbs. So I believe, as part of, for those of you that may not know, a huge part of the recovery community is the 12-step programs of AA, Narcotics Anonymous, etc. And they believe in surrendering to what they refer to as a higher power. I know for me that higher power is God, and I believe that all good things come from God. So, in order to help him shift his perspective from the despair he was feeling, I asked him to begin looking for small things that gave him joy. Things like randomly walking around looking for his favorite color. Things like, I work in a campus in the mountains, so look for animals. Look for somebody smiling. Look for small things to give him joy, and he began finding them. And he began to have experiences that were difficult to explain, like waking up and having an elk in front of his cabin that just laid there while he walked to the lodge, like somebody asking him just the right question. And he began to work with our spiritual leaders and open up to other practices and things and open his mind. And when he left, he felt, his report was, I don't know, but I definitely know something is there, and I feel like I'm growing. How that impacted him psychologically is because it was able to shift his perspective. He felt a lot of guilt and shame for his use and the actions while using, and he felt like almost hopeless. And that shifted him to a perspective of hope, which opened his mind to being able to focus on treatment objectives and actually get help through the treatment program. And I see things like that frequently.
So their being open to spiritual things opened them up to essentially a sense of hope in the world, that there's something good out there that cares. And that's paved the way for, I mean, you have to have hope if you want to improve. You have to have hope if you want to heal in any way. So that paved the way for them to begin their healing journey at the next level. That's awesome. Chris, how have psychology and spirituality blended for you, and both in your own experience and in the people that you've helped? How has psychology helped their spiritual journey?
So for me, I think one of the things that's clear when I sit down and talk to people and do what I would consider an intake session for spiritual direction, I make a clear distinction between what's spiritual direction, what's pastoral counseling, and what's therapy. Obviously, I'm not a therapist, so I can't go into therapy, but I do have to have some kind of knowledge of ways in which psychological issues will impact one's relationship with God and with others. So that just being aware of them and noticing them, um, it can be helpful to recognize where there's a block and then maybe refer the person to a therapist. So that's one of the ways, at least in practice, that I've seen that take place. And there have been times when people have had difficulty with their relationship, say with their father, and then had difficulty relating to God as Father. And so sometimes there has to be an intentional focus on that particular aspect of God in order to have some breakthrough and to have an experience of God that is beyond what their normal human experience has been. Personally, I've utilized therapy as a help in terms of my own growth because of um, my experience with trauma, which was not able to be solved only on a spiritual level, and therefore I had to utilize psychological helps, especially for reducing triggers and utilizing EMDR for that. I'm a proponent of seeking help in whatever area is going to be most helpful, and I find it to be a great help to know that there are therapists that are out there that are open to spirituality.
Thank you, Chris. So it sounds like there's a lot, both for the therapist side of things. There's a huge element of hope, and a huge part of that bringing some context in a way that invites the healing person to believe that things can get better. And it sounds like for the spiritual side of things that it's, if there are things in your path preventing you from having the spiritual experience that you are wanting, therapy can often help remove those obstacles. How would you respond to that?
I'd say you're right on.
I believe that they go hand in hand. I, especially with addiction, believe very strongly it is a spiritual malady, and being able to blend the two. We're very blessed since the mid-90s in that God has been revealing a lot to us about the brain and about how it deals with our environment and how we create what's called our schema, or how we see ourselves in the world, our ego, if you will, and ways that we can utilize new tools in the world of field of psychology to be able to help people change that. You really can create a new you if you want to, getting over fears, getting over habit. It really is fantastical, the things that we're discovering about the brain.